in the heart of a quiet rural farming community, nestled amidst endless fields of green, I lived with my father, 44, male, and stepmother, Linda, 37, female, during my high school years. When I moved in, their marriage was still in its infancy, and little did I know, it would soon take a tumultuous turn. As the days turned into months, and the months into a year, the once happy union between my dad and Linda began to unravel at the seams. The household became a battleground for their unresolved conflicts, a storm that would occasionally rage into my world. I was my father's only child living under his roof, which meant that our family unit consisted solely of the three of us, along with our trusty cat as our silent observer. Linda, however, was a peculiar blend of adulthood and middle school bullying tactics. She had an uncanny knack for pinpointing my insecurities and weaponizing them with cruel precision. For instance, she'd mock my appearance, calling out, "You have an awkwardly big head." Her words were like sharp arrows, finding their mark in the chinks of my self-esteem. But her cruelty didn't stop there. She'd undermine my aspirations, telling me that success was out of reach and that I should set my sights low when it came to important jobs. Linda even probed into my emotional well-being, repeatedly asking whether I felt suicidal, despite my genuine lack of unhappiness. Despite the turmoil at home, I was a somewhat typical teenager. My grades were solid, my social circle was thriving, and I excelled in extracurricular activities such as chess and wrestling. It was almost as if my pursuit of normalcy was a silent rebellion against the chaos that had taken root within our household. Living with Linda was akin to sharing a roof with Matilda's fearsome headmistress, Mrs. Trunchbull. Any minor infraction, like leaving a dish out, was met with stern reprimands, and in our small, tight-knit family, there was no one else to shoulder the blame. It seemed as though Linda had an uncanny ability to twist words and deflect responsibility, making it nearly impossible for me to plead my case without being silenced by her verbal dexterity. But one fateful day, an opportunity presented itself, a chance for me to even the score. Our cat, a formidable hunter, had a habit of gifting us with the gruesome trophies of its various kills. On this particular day, when Linda was visiting her parents and the house was blissfully quiet, the cat made a rather gruesome offering, a large, freshly killed, and blood-soaked mouse. I seized the moment. Carefully, I took the lifeless mouse by its tail, crimson blood dripping in macabre patterns, and placed it with eerie precision on Linda's pillow. I watched as the crimson seeped into the pristine threads of her pillowcase. Hours later, as I idled in the yard, I heard it, a thunderous eruption of anger that filled the house. "That stupid cat!" Linda's furious voice echoed through the walls. The cat was with me, safe and sound, having not suffered any harm in my act of silent revenge. It was a symphony of poetic justice, and for the first time, I relished in Linda's fury. I never confessed to my dark deed, and in the end, the secret of the bloody mouse remained mine alone, a small victory in a household where victories were scarce.
I've been working at the bookstore for a while now, and over time, I've come to recognize some of our regular customers. One of them is an older lady who visits our store every Sunday after her church service, accompanied by her two adorable grandchildren, who appear to be around 4 or 5 years old. While I don't know her personally, our friendly interactions have made us familiar faces to each other. One particularly heartwarming Sunday, I found myself behind the counter, ringing up her purchases as usual. The two energetic kids were captivated by a Spider-Man display near the registers. They weren't causing any trouble or being excessively loud, they were simply being typical lively youngsters. After the lady had selected her books and other items, she called to her kiddos to join her, and we exchanged friendly waves as they headed toward the exit. As the next customer approached my register, I noticed a smirk forming on his face. He made an unnecessary nod in the direction of the older lady and the children and uttered a derogatory comment. Now there's a fine argument for birth control. He likely assumed that I would agree with his disrespectful attitude, given that I'm a guy. However, my deep appreciation for children and my respect for the kind old lady made his words deeply unsettling. In response, I couldn't help but let out an audible gasp of disbelief, coupled with a disapproving look. I held that expression for a few extra moments, just long enough to make him squirm. The surprise on his face was evident, and I decided it was time to speak up. I informed him that the lady was actually my mother-in-law, and the kids were my niece and nephew. I expressed my displeasure with his tone and how he had spoken about my family. His face turned an embarrassed shade of crimson as he stammered out an apology. However, I didn't think that was enough. I firmly told him that if he genuinely regretted his comment, he should apologize directly to the lady and her grandkids. At that moment, they hadn't quite reached the exit, so I waved enthusiastically in their direction, trying to catch their attention. Feeling thoroughly embarrassed and cornered, the rude customer decided to cut his losses. He swiftly left the store without making the book purchase he had initially intended to make. It was a small victory, but it left me with a sense of satisfaction, knowing that I had defended my family and upheld the values of kindness and respect.
Let's delve deeper into the college freshman dorm days, where this amusing tale of late-night religious rock and divine intervention unfolded. It all began with my friend sharing a cramped dorm room with the constant annoyance of his next-door neighbor, Farley. While many college students indulged in various musical genres to unwind, Farley had a penchant for late-night sessions of Christian rock, which, while perhaps well-intentioned, wreaked havoc on my friend's sleep schedule. Christian rock or not, being woken up at 3 a.m. on school nights was far from ideal. My friend decided to take matters into his own hands and approached Farley to discuss the issue. However, instead of a neighborly conversation, he found himself in the middle of a religious sermon. Farley had an unshakable conviction that his late-night stereo sessions were a form of spreading the gospel, attempting to justify his nocturnal noise with fervent religious explanations. My friend's efforts to reason with Farley during the day were met with more preaching, and attempts to make him feel guilty for daring to complain. It turned out that Farley was not just a late-night musical missionary, he was also a social paradox, attending religious group meetings by day and hitting the bars with the same fervor, often ending up in a state of inebriation. My friend's patience wore thin, and he decided to involve Farley's exasperated roommate in his quest for some late-night peace and quiet. The roommate, equally frustrated by Farley's behavior, had already been seeking refuge off campus with his girlfriend. However, he was willing to assist in a little prank to set things right. Being the tech-savvy member of the group, I had the skills to execute our plan. I had access to the college's audio equipment as part of my role in managing audio systems on campus. I devised a plan to teach Farley a lesson he wouldn't forget. Setting up a microphone, mixer, and amplifier in my friend's room, we were ready for action. With the roommate's cooperation, we gained access to Farley's room, where I executed the audio switcheroo. I disconnected his speakers from his stereo and cleverly connected them to my amplifier instead. The beauty of cinder block walls with convenient holes for power outlets meant I could easily snake the wires through the shared wall. A strategically placed stuffed animal in Farley's room concealed my tampering. We lay in wait for Farley's late-night arrival, anticipating the perfect moment for our divine intervention. The night unfolded precisely as planned. Farley, stumbling into his room in a drunken haze, attempted to turn on his stereo. Instead of familiar tunes, he was met with an unexpected voice booming from his speakers, the voice of a higher authority. I, posing as God, admonished Farley for his nighttime disturbances in the name of religion. Farley's reaction was nothing short of comical. He exclaimed in disbelief and posed questions to his newfound celestial interlocutor. I, playing the role convincingly, responded to his queries with divine wisdom and authority, instructing him to cease his nocturnal activities and get some rest. The result? Farley, seemingly dazed and bewildered, stopped waking up the entire dormitory in the middle of the night. While he continued his preaching, it was much more avoidable during daylight hours. However, Farley's religious fervor and penchant for alcohol eventually led to his downfall. His academic performance suffered, and he flunked out of school. When the semester came to an end, Farley packed his bags and left, never to be seen on campus again. Our divine prank had achieved its intended purpose, and our nights were finally peaceful. It was a tale we chuckled about for years to come, a quirky blend of divine intervention and creative problem-solving that made our college days all the more memorable. Back in my college days, I shared an unforgettable experience involving my friend Mel and her quirky chihuahuas. Mel and I had been best buddies for years, despite our differences. She was from a wealthy background, while I was more of a down-to-earth type. It was a peculiar friendship, but it worked. One day, I got an invitation to visit Mel's place. She and her mom had recently adopted 2 adorable rescue chihuahuas with a hint of Spitz in their lineage. These little fluffballs had quickly become the rulers of the household. They had a habit of barking at anything that dared to breathe within a 1-mile radius. Nonetheless, I couldn't wait to meet them. As I approached Mel's apartment building, I could already hear the yappy orchestra echoing from 3 stories above. Mel met me in the hallway and gave me a quick heads up. Apparently, these furry newcomers were still adjusting to their surroundings, and they had a particular penchant for expressing their displeasure through growling and barking. Mel requested my patience and reassured me not to take their antics personally. I entered the apartment, and there they were, perched on the couch like fluffy little foxes, barking at the TV as if they were trying to engage in a debate.
Aww.
How cute they are, Mel! I exclaimed, and that's when the unimaginable happened. Those seemingly innocent pups locked eyes with me, fell dead silent, their fur bristling, and they revealed their teeth in a menacing snarl. My friends had suddenly transformed into demonic creatures, and I was frozen in place. Startled, I stammered, "What did I do wrong?" Mel's mom, who seemed to take a liking to me, rushed to my rescue. She handed me a bacon treat, insisting that I approach the chihuahuas slowly, speak softly, and repeat their names to win their favor. I took on the role of the dog whisperer, cautiously extending my hand, crouching down, and cooing gentle words of affection. Miraculously, they accepted the snack, albeit with a sinister slowness that would make any villain proud. With the Bocconi offering devoured, they ceased their growling for a while, and their fur gradually returned to its natural state. Standing on the couch arm with their noses in the air and ears slightly lowered, they seemed somewhat intrigued by my presence. Mel's mom was ecstatic, exclaiming, "Oh, how precious! They like you. Now you can pet them." Skeptical, I wondered aloud, "Are you sure? They're not wagging their tails or anything." Mel joined me, and we cautiously began to pet the little troublemakers. They appeared comfortable with her, but as soon as they realized it was my hand touching them, they shifted into attack mode. It was like witnessing a swift transformation from docile canines to ferocious wolves. The room erupted in deafening barks, dripping saliva, and eyes popping out of their sockets. I was completely unprepared, stumbling backward and pressing myself against the wall in a desperate bid for safety. The chihuahuas, with relentless determination, cornered me and proceeded to bite my shoes and shred my jeans. Panicking, I implored Mel and her mom to take control, pleading for them to pick up the dogs so I could escape the chaos. Instead, they hesitated, believing that these pint-sized terrors just needed time to socialize and would not actually bite me. I countered, exclaiming, "They are biting me already. Please, get them away from me." Finally realizing the gravity of the situation, they rushed to bring out an expandable indoor dog pen from the storage room, leaving me alone with the menacing pair. Seizing the moment, I sprang to my feet, causing the chihuahuas to back off momentarily. I decided to employ a cunning strategy that would assert my dominance over them. With theatrical flair, I faked stomping on the ground and lunged backward, mimicking the intimidating actions of a bully. The chihuahuas, bewildered and terrified, cowered, scurrying around the room, knocking over pots and floor decor in their frantic search for a hiding spot. As Mel and her mom returned, they were met with an unexpected sight, their once ferocious pets trembling and crying, while I stood victorious. When they inquired about the sudden change, I casually replied, "I just stood up," and they got scared. They bought my explanation, believing that I possessed some magical aura that tamed the troublesome twosome. From then on, whenever the chihuahuas acted out, I waited for a moment of solitude and executed my newfound talent once again. I was never caught, and they remained perplexed as to why their pets behaved differently with me. It never crossed their minds that I had been their unwitting behavioral coach. And so, I emerged unscathed from the clutches of the furry terrors, with my reputation as a chihuahua whisperer intact.